Heather, what do you make of the USA stance so far?
Well, I really think that the United States' lack of urgency and ambition in these negotiations is deplorable. And the youth and the other non-governmental organizations here are really disappointed and embarrassed and here to hold these leaders and negotiators accountable and telling them what they're doing is simply not enough.
And how can you hold them to account?
Well, we have been meeting with certain negotiators. So yesterday, the United States youth had a meeting with Jonathan Pershing, in which he gave us a little bit of brief of what has been happening in the negotiations and then opened it up for questions. And particularly, I've been working on capacity building, which is really a development strategy that identifies where countries are having issues with and providing the resources for them to change them. And that is what the youth have been doing, you know, community organizing, grassroots, all from the bottom to the top, and that's really the way that we think that we can influence these negotiations.
Okay, well, Toby, Canada's Minister Peter Kent, what's going on there? He says that Kyoto just isn't worth saving at the moment. How do you see it, and what would be your message to him and his delegation?
I would tell Peter Kent to stop putting polluters before people. That's part of our main message here as the Canadian Youth Delegation. We are simply embarrassed and frankly a little outraged that our government is simply putting forth the needs of the oil industry ahead of those that are downstream from the most destructive industries on earth in Canada.
But in the long run, isn't it better for Canada that you preserve the Alberta tar sands and use all the oil there? Because this could make you billions over the next 10, 20, 50 years.
I think what's important to note is that the tar sands aren't good for Canadian interests because they're violating treaty and human rights. They're simply, you know, they're the most destructive industrial project in the world's history. And the Canadian Youth Delegation is firmly opposed to any further tar sands expansion.
Okay, and Heather, realistically, what can a youth organisation, a student coalition get up to in Durban? Do you have enough access to delegates? Can you really influence their decisions?
I would say definitely. I think that they want us to believe that we can't because we make their job hard. But because we're here, we're nagging them, and we're also reminding them that we represent a very large voting constituency. And if they want to be elected and stay in power, then they have to listen to what we're saying. And at the same time, reminding them of things that it maybe is easy to forget in their positions. The issues of injustice, which is really, I think, what a lot of us are really motivated by, is the abuse of people and in this process. So yeah, youth can get right in the thick of it. I've already been working on drafting policy and writing specific text that we want to see in these final agreements. So youth can definitely play a role.
And Toby, do you feel you're here with a big delegation here in terms of the Canadian Youth Group, but do you really feel that you guys can make a difference? And do you feel you speak for all Canadians?
In terms of our influence at the negotiations themselves, unfortunately, Peter Kent has made it fairly clear that they're firm on their commitment not to commit to the second commitment period for Kyoto. So there is very little leeway, really, for us to influence policy, especially as it comes from the top down. What we see our role here is empowering youth in our communities back at home and working with the youth delegations here in Durban to both build capacity and raise awareness that we can shift public opinion. It's just a matter of speaking loudly enough and again trying to counter the $1.4 billion in oil subsidies that the Canadian government is giving to these industries.
Okay, well, let's just finish on an optimistic note. What's there to look forward to? What are you looking forward to over the next 2 weeks?
I'm looking forward to, really building connections with global youth and also trying to, promote our message here. We're doing a lot of really, really interesting work. In fact, tomorrow we're going to be having a Buy Back Our Future bake sale at our booth here. And our attempt is to kind of compete with the oil industry in terms of their capability of guiding our country's climate policy. So youth around Canada are sending letters to the Prime Minister with spare change in an attempt to sway him to see things our way.
Right, and Heather, finally, what are you up to? Are you sending Barack Obama some of your spare change? What are you getting up to?
Well, similarly, I'm very excited about the collaboration with other youth, specifically the South African and Chinese youth on issues of coal, because that's something that all of our countries are really fighting, and we've had a lot of success in the United States, and we want to share that and help fight this together. And then also mobilizing our friends back home in the States. Congress actually sent a letter to the negotiators saying these are climate policies that we would support, and so we want to have an action and thank those that signed on this, but also call out the members of the Senate and also other members of the House that were not signing on that. And that's a really great way to kind of provide that connection for those who couldn't be in Durban with us.